Hey, I'm Quint from Quint Builds. My YouTube channel is kind of taken off, coming up on 200,000 subscribers at the time of this recording. And a lot of people are asking like, hey Quint, what's your background? I really want to be able to do some of that stuff. How did you get to this point? And so I thought I would do a video to talk about that. As a kid, I was fascinated with mechanical stuff and the things that, like, my mom would give me an old broken watch to take apart, or I'd take apart bicycles without asking, but just anything mechanical, just completely fascinated by it. So when it came to high school and I took a mechanics class, automotive mechanics, I was absolutely fascinated with, like, they had a four-cylinder engine that was literally cut in half, so you could see the pistons going up and down and learn the four strokes of a piston. I just absolutely loved that stuff. So senior year, when it was time to decide, what are you going to do? What are you going to do for a career? I'd heard about engineering. I'd never met an engineer. I didn't know for sure what they did, but that fascination with mechanical stuff, I figured, I'm so passionate about that. It's probably a really good career for me to go after. And it was a major guess whether that was the right thing, but fortunately I guessed right. Now, I ended up getting my degree in manufacturing engineering, and that was maybe the most difficult thing I've ever done in my entire life. The professors would tell us that 2/3 of the people who started engineering school would never finish it. And that's probably about right. The math is extremely difficult, at least I found it extremely difficult. But I wanted to be an engineer so badly that I made myself do it. I had to take 5 different types of calculus, those, man, which was extremely rough. But I learned it, and if I hadn't, I'm very glad I did, because if I hadn't learned all that stuff, I could not have done the projects that I've done here, like the calculating the amount of energy that was available off of my roof to be able to turn into electricity. I'll never forget, there were a lot of mathematical concepts that I just struggled with. I just wasn't getting it, getting so frustrated. And then finally, when it would click, it'd be like, oh, why didn't you explain it that way the first time? And it was that frustration that gave me sort of this additional passion about helping other people understand. It's like, I don't want anybody to go through that level of frustration that I went through. So it kind of primed me for this, I wonder if I could ever make some content that would help people understand those things that I struggled so hard with. So I got my manufacturing engineering degree in 2000. So for the last roughly 20 years, I've been working in manufacturing, working around making parts, producing stuff, and working around a lot of really smart people. And I'm not talking just engineers, I'm talking technicians, machinists. So anytime that I was interacting with those folks, if I had to go take a part to the machine shop or the tool and die shop to get something worked on, after I was done talking to the guy, I'd be like, hey, wait a minute, how are you even going to hold this thing on that milling machine? And they said, oh, I just fixture it like that. And it's like, oh man, I'm still fascinated by that stuff. In fact, even today, if I go watch a CNC lathe turning parts, I'm just as excited about it today as the first time I saw it 20 years ago. So it's that definitely having a passion for manufactured parts and picking the brains of as many smart people as I possibly could. So that's one of those benefits of picking a career in manufacturing, whether you're going to be a machinist or an assembler or a technician or engineer. You're going to be working around a lot of really smart people, and if you ask them questions, they'll probably answer it, and it's a huge benefit going forward. Now, with a passion for that, a passion for making parts, a passion for building stuff, naturally I've wanted to be able to do that as a hobby as well. And people comment and said, man, look at that shop that you've got with all that equipment. It's like, Yeah, and I've had to piece it together over the last 20 something years. I mean, when my wife and I graduated college, we had $50,000 in debt between the two of us. And before I even paid that off, I dropped a few $1,000s on that lathe. That's actually 3-in-1 lathe mill that you see. That may not have been very smart to be spending money while I still had a huge debt to pay off. But I knew I really wanted to be able to machine stuff as part of my shop, and went ahead and made that investment. And it's been probably every 2 to 5 years I'm able to save up enough to get something else. I mean, it started with an angle grinder and then borrowing somebody's wire feed welder until I was sure that that's what I wanted to get and got a welder. So yeah, it takes a long time to piece it together, but that's how I got to what you see in my videos. Now, somewhere along the way, I started to develop a fear of public speaking. And I know that's pretty hard to believe seeing me on camera, but it was really bad. Like, I really dreaded going to meetings and have to speak in front of a group. So I very reluctantly joined a public speaking club about 10 years ago called Toastmasters. And man, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. But then 3 or 4 years into it, one of the more senior members of the club was like, "Hey, Quint, come on, we're having another speech competition, and come on, you've been doing this for a while. You got to compete." And I was like, ugh. And I really didn't want to do that either, but I did. And then in 2017, so however many years later, I wrote a speech kind of making fun of my redneck background and my big truck that ended up having me win the state level competition. They call it the district level. And that got me a spot at the international competition up in Canada, where I was really close. I placed second in my semifinal. Otherwise, if I had placed first, I would have been the next night on a stage in front of 2,000 people giving a very emotional speech that I'd never given before in a competition. But what that did, because I was so reluctant, but I did it anyway, it forced me to develop this more personable voice to let this, what people are calling the Bob Ross of engineering voice, which I think is hilarious. It taught me to let that out in front of people, in spite of it being an uncomfortable situation, to let that out and connect with the audience and develop that as a skill. And of course, because of that, that's made a huge difference in my on-camera persona for these YouTube videos. One of the things I did as an engineer to continue to work on my skills was to get a certification in this drafting standard called GD&T. And it's super boring stuff. Don't go look it up, and unless you're already an engineer or technician or something that wants to be able to learn that. But so I worked really hard and got my certification in this drafting standard, but I saw an awful lot of people, even engineers, that were using it that were missing some of the fundamental concepts. And it's like, well, these people are plenty intelligent enough to understand this. I think they just haven't been shown the right way. So some of that passion that I developed back in college for just explaining things the right way came out, and was like, you know what, I bet I can make some YouTube content that I could point people to. When they come to me with a question, I can say, you know what, I've already answered that once in the best way I know how on this YouTube channel, and I would point them to that. So I started that YouTube channel, posted the first video in 2017, so it's been out there for a few years, and I had no intention to do anything beyond that but just post a few videos. But I started getting comments from people all over the world saying, man, I've just spent a weekend lecture on this stuff and I wasn't getting it. Then I watched your video and in 10 minutes it totally clicked. Thank you so much. Well, that's kind of cool. So after enough positive feedback like that, I started to think, well, shoot, maybe I should do one of these bigger channels and just start to tackle some of those things on engineering as a whole. And so there came the BUILD acronym, of the Better Understanding Involves Learning and Doing. I really liked that, and just started to throw my name on there. So that's how Quint Builds started, was just a desire to, man, I've got a lot of things that I've wanted to play with and explore, and I've got this equipment, so why not? Let's make some content and see if people like it. And fortunately, a lot of you do. Now, anyone who knows me also knows that I'm really into personal development. On top of all that public speaking stuff, I also listen to podcasts whenever I get a chance. And the podcast that has had the biggest impact on me is, ironically, Impact Theory with Tom Bilyeu. And his goal is to bring on the most influential guests that he possibly can that will tell their story of the struggles that they went through, and sort of a rags to riches kind of a thing of how they had to work really hard to overcome something, and now they're super successful. And man, if you're not listening to those, it's completely free. Tom already made his fortune. He's not trying to make money off of you. So he puts this stuff out there to try to change the consciousness. And one of the things that he said that really resonated with me was, if you're looking for something to do with your life, is develop a skill that is unique to you and then put it to work in the service of others. And it's like, man, I've got this shop all put together. What could I do? It's like, oh yeah, okay. I've got the mix of the all that math that I forced myself to learn, the public speaking that I made myself do, and then the fabrication skills and the passion for building stuff. I think let me see if I can wrap this into this massive something, this work that's incredibly tough, but that I'll also enjoy, and put it out there on YouTube and just see what happens. Now, the other thing Tom will tell you is that the struggle is guaranteed, success is not. So if you're going to do something that may not succeed, that you might fail, do something you're going to enjoy. So yeah, this was hundreds, if not thousands of hours to put this channel together, but I enjoyed every step of it. So even if it fell on its face and I only got 500 views, which is kind of where it was at for many months, I had that assurance that at least I enjoyed what I was doing, so it really didn't matter. So that is what I've done, is put all those skills together, and I'm using it to serve others, to serve you. And I'm really glad that there's that many of you out there that are interested in that product, that are willing to watch it. So my deepest sincerity, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.